Okay, I'm going to assume that was about 10 seconds for TV10. So I would like the city to call the City of Mount Vernon Special City Council meeting for August 26, 2020 to the order. The time is now 6:01. We'll go ahead and call the roll call of council members. We'll do this slowly so everyone can answer. So, all right. Council Member Moberg.
Here.
Council Member Molinar is on the road, excused tonight. Council Member Melissa Beaton.
Here.
Council Member Mark Hulst.
Here.
Council Member Mary Hudson.
Here.
Council Member Iris Carrillas.
Here.
Council Member Richard Brocksmith.
Here.
All right, thank you. Moving into our consent agenda tonight, we have 3 items: the approval of the regular council meeting minutes for August 12, the approval of the August 20 payroll checks, and the approval of August 26 claims.
I move for approval of our consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mary and a second by Melissa. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Under reports tonight, we have our review of emails from the public, and Peter Donovan will present. Peter.
Thanks, Mayor. Council, you'll recall back in March of this year, the governor ordered a suspension of the Open Public Meetings Act due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Since that time, City Council is not permitted to meet in person, and as a result, the public is unable to physically attend a council meeting to address City Council. This, of course, is why we're meeting electronically, where the public has live viewing access, but no live audio access, but they can't be here in person. So all statements that are sent to the email address council@mountvernonwa.gov will be read into the public record at each regularly scheduled council meeting on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of each month. And so over the past 2 weeks, council has received just one email, one statement that I'm aware of. This one comes to you from Brian Hill at North 26th in Mount Vernon. And Brian writes, while the signal at North 30th and College Way is nice, it does absolutely nothing to control and or stop the speeders on College Way. From my apartment at the Summer Glen Apartments, I can see College Way from about the 911 center to just past North 30th. On any given day, it is not uncommon to see and or hear cars racing on College Way. I know for a fact there are drivers who drive anywhere from 10 miles an hour and higher on College Way. It makes it frustrating to a driver who tries to always drive the speed limit. I have been on the road and I have actually seen drivers drive between 55 and 70 miles per hour in the 45 zone that is just east of North 30th. In fact, I was walking to my mom's house one day and I saw a car and a pickup truck racing each other, and they had to be doing 90 or 100 miles per hour. Do you know just how many patrol vehicles I have seen on College Way from North 30th to Waugh Road in the last 4 months? Just one. That is how many. That one was a state patrol car. Now, I am a huge supporter of the police. I always have been and always will be, but I have to ask, what good are the laws of the road, speed limits or following too close, etc., if they are not being enforced? The laws should be for everyone and not a select few. On College Way from North 26th East to Waugh Road, the police are not enforcing the speed laws at all. Brian Hill. That's all of the public comment, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is council aware of any other ones? All right, great. Thank you. We'll move along. Item B is our council member comments time. Any council member comments tonight? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, under Mayor's report. So instead of a traditional slides and information, I wanted to just touch base with City Council about our committee meeting. So because of the OPMA suspension from the governor and not being able to meet in person, as you all know, we've elected to do just our traditional, by code council meetings on the 2nd and fourth Wednesdays of the month. But now we're kind of stacking up with things that we need to talk about since we haven't had that opportunity. So I wanted to propose that we go ahead and do our committee meetings. Actually, the committee meetings for the first and third Wednesdays in September. Now, the governor's order, I believe, expires as of the 31st, but we do anticipate that he'll, probably extend that. So we would go ahead and do our committee meetings via Zoom. And so it would be in the same exact format. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? And then I have a couple ideas on proposed agendas for both the first and third week of September. Or I would say any objections to that. That might be easier to ask. So, okay. Oh, go ahead. Mark, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say there's no objection to that. We need to get moving forward with the budget process and everything else. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to meet more often and have a little more interaction so we can actually get through the budget.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I would like to say for next week, which would be September 2nd. And I spoke with Councilmember Moberg about the public safety agenda. And then also looking at the committee agenda requests from council. So we would have Chief Kamek do a presentation on hiring and a presentation on use of force. And because we would do that on our Zoom, then we can record that and then have that available not only on our website, but then play it on TV 10. So we kind of get both ways to get that information out. And then Chief Bryce would just do a quick update on the surplus vehicle that I think Mark had asked about, so we can do updates on that. And then we'd like to have just a discussion on infrastructure projects, which would be that stations 1, 2, and 3. And Doug will touch on that a little bit in our meeting tonight when we kind of look forward to 2021. But we've got some different ideas and just kind of want to, before we do a lot of work on that, we thought it would be a great time to touch base with council and have some discussions on that. And then lastly, Councilmember Moberg would give an update on, she's been working on a structure of the fireworks committee with Peter, and so could touch base on that as well. So I think that's a pretty good, robust agenda to move forward with. Any thoughts on that?
One thing that I'd like to, on this surplus vehicle, I'd like to hear from Gary Owens on what his thoughts are on that vehicle.
Yep. Definitely have Gary, and he's been working with the fire on that, so it's perfect time for him to pop on and update you. So, okay. And then what I was thinking was for then our regular meetings, our second and fourth, if we go ahead and just start at 6 o'clock like we have been, and we can fold in those department updates during that. So we would fold in the Public Works update next week, just but start our meetings at 6, which I think everyone seems to enjoy. I kind of like that myself. So I thought we could do that. So that takes care of the second week. The third week is the 16th. And as you all know, it would be normally the Development Services Committee. And we have some agenda requests from way back in March before we had to stop. So what I would say is taking care of those. And that's talking about the Mount Vernon Commons project, House Bill 1590, which I had a conversation about with the county today. So we have things we can talk through. And then possibly even the review of the master downtown plan and whether we have enough time to invite one of our consultants from the Collins-Warman study to chat through what they did in Bothell. So I'm not sure if that would actually work out, but we could at least take care of the committee agenda requests that have been just hanging out there since the start of the pandemic. And then, of course, a quick update from Development Services too. So any thoughts on that? Okay, so if there's some by chance we can go ahead and meet in person, we'll do that. But I think we're going to just go ahead and plan on publishing the agendas and have the Zoom information just like this to comply. So, okay, great. We have a plan. Thank you very much. So that's all I had for Mayor's report. Any committee agenda requests? Okay, I think we're covering our list of requests that we were trying to make up on. So, okay, perfect. All right, moving into new business tonight. Item A is the solid waste service rate change for the transfer station tipping fee increase. And Esco Bell, our Public Works Director, is going to lead us through that particular item, which we've talked about recently. So,
Thank you.
Esco, you ready? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I want to share my screen. Did I do that well enough? Do you see it yet? Screen 2?
I do not see it yet. There we go.
Oh, okay. You see the screen now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Staff recommends council adopt the attached ordinance amending section 8.12.120, the Mount Vernon Municipal Code, which will revise garbage rates effective October 1, 2020. The city of Mount Vernon has an agreement with Skagit County for solid waste disposal services. Effective June of this year, the county increased their disposal fee from $96 to $98. The cost impact to the city is approximately $3,000 per month. Though the rate changes are relatively small for each city customer, it's important that these additional costs are paid for by the city's garbage costs or garbage rates. Staff are recommending that the city increase the current collection rates and pass through the disposal fee increase and as they occur through May 2024. And then the table I have on your screen here just summarizes those rate changes, and we've showed those over the past couple of weeks a couple of times. So a public hearing notice was published on July 29, 2020 and August 5th, 2020, and a public hearing held on August 12th. No comments were received, so tonight we're requesting the council pass this ordinance.
Okay, so this is something we've chatted about a few times over the last few council meetings. Is there any questions for Esco on this?
I'd move the adoption of ordinance 3807.
Okay, great.
Second.
All right, motion by Mark and a second by Aaron. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Esco.
Council.
And thank you, Mark, for knowing what that ordinance number was. Thank you. All right. Item B tonight is a closed record public hearing regarding a zoning change of the Dole property. And Rebecca Lowe, from Development Service, is here. Rebecca.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Council. Let me get my screen up here. Can everyone see my screen? Do I need to move it?
I think we're good, Rebecca.
Can you see it? Okay, good.
Yep.
Sorry. And sorry. Hold on. I want to make sure. This is opening on the wrong side. Blessed, I should have practiced this before we started. Let me move this over here and do this. No. Well, we can do it this way too. So you can't see my screen, correct? If I go to full screen, for some reason it's wanting to bump it over to my other side. What if that looks okay?
So everyone can see that with council?
Yeah, it looks good. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Rebecca. It's fine.
All right. So this evening's request is for council approval of an ordinance that would rezone the DL property from its existing zoning designation of public to single-family residential that has a maximum density of 4.54 dwelling units an acre, or what we call our R1 4.0 zone. This is a site that's located at 4461 East Division Street. It is approximately 5 acres in size. And as council will remember, or you've seen this recently, is because you approved a comprehensive plan amendment on this exact same site in 2019. Earlier or last month on July 15th, there was an open record public hearing before the hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner has recommended approval of the subject rezone. The hearing examiner's recommendation was included in your packets. This is a map of this site. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen, I've just identified the overall project site in relationship to the city overall. I've got the city boundaries in red, and then the project site you can see is in the southeast portion of the city. And then the map on the right side of the screen is showing the existing zoning of the site. So you can see that the subject site is the green, and it's currently public. And the areas surrounding that site are all single-family residential. Specifically, as I'm sure you'll noticed in the staff report, the areas immediately to the east and across the street on East Division are all the R1 4.0 zone, and the properties that abut the site on the west side are the R1 3.0 zone. So it's a zone that has a slightly dense zone to the west of the site, but to the east and south of the site is the 4.0 zone, which is why staff made a recommendation that the R1 4.0 be chosen. And staff finds that the applicant has completed the procedural steps and the rezone ordinance before ordinance complies with the Mount Vernon Municipal Code and state law. And as such, staff is recommending approval.
Okay, is there any questions for Rebecca before we open the closed record public hearing? Okay, now this is the first time I'm going to do this, so we're going to see how this is going to go. Okay, so I'm going to admit Ross's iPhone. Looks like they're still connecting to audio.
Maybe unless the PowerPoint's still needed, we could stop sharing the screen and be able to see people a little better.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Still trying to connect. Well, there we go. Hi there, Ross.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm great. So we have a couple different hearings. Were you here to testify for the Dole rezone, or is it another topic?
I'm actually on with one of my colleagues, Darton, for the Viewmont Mobile Home Park.
Oh, okay. We still have another few things to go, so I'm going to go ahead and put you back in the waiting room, and we'll bring you in on that topic, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay. It looks like we have no one that's wishing to testify on this particular item, so I'm going to go ahead and close the closed record public hearing regarding the Dole rezone. All right, any questions for Rebecca on this? If not, this would be an ordinance, and it would be Ordinance 3808.
Since it's just a rezoning of the property and no actual plans for the project, I would like to move that we approve or authorize the mayor to approve ordinance number 3808.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so a motion by Mary and a second by Iris. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Oh, Opposed, same sign. Looks like none. Motion carries. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, we survived our first live public hearing. We'll go to the next one. Okay, item C is the final plat approval of the Joel Estates plat. And so, Rebecca, I'm going to toss it back to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so for the second item that I have this evening, I'm asking for council approval of a resolution for the Joel Estates final plat and authorizing the mayor to sign the final plat maps. Although this is the same applicant as the previous agenda item, these are completely different pieces of property in different parts of the city. So for this agenda item, there is 11 single-family residential lots that are being created across an approximate 3-acre site. These lots will range in size from 7,500 square feet to a little over 15,000 square feet, with an average lot size of just over 9,000 square feet. This site is located in the northern portion of the city. You can see on the map that's displayed, north is towards the top of the screen, and I have identified Hogue Road and Francis Road just to get you oriented as to where you are. You can also see the Skagit River on your left-hand side of the screen and Barney Lake to the right. In addition, the black line that you see around portions there is the city limits. And then I've got the subject site identified with red there. And then I've got a same site, just zoomed in now that you know where in the city we're located. So with this aerial map, north is towards the top of the screen again. And this time I've identified the North Hill PUD that's located to the west of the site. And you can see to the southeast of the site, the Highland Greens PUD and the Rosewood PUD. And this aerial map was obviously taken when the subdivision was still under construction, but it is a good overall view of this site that we're looking at tonight. Showing plat maps is never my favorite thing to do, just because they are really busy. So I always try to just label a few things that I wanted you to see on this site. You'll see overall that this is sort of a triangle shaped piece of property, and there are 2 different road segments. We've got, you can see where I've identified, there's one new public road that's being created, and that new public road will be North 28th Street. But then we've also got a private road that extends and has a hammerhead on it that will be named Dio Lane, that extends from the new public road. So we've got both a public and a private road being constructed. This road is what we call a type 2 road. It's got 15-foot through lanes, landscaping, sidewalks, and there is no parking on the west side of the public street, and then the no parking flips over to the east side on the private street. And just in case you're wondering, we determine which side will be no parking after looking at the number of parking spaces that could be accommodated on either side. The side that can accommodate the most parking is, of course, the side that we want to keep the parking on when we do have these circumstances where we've got parking restricted roads. And with that, staff has found that the developer has complied with all of their preliminary plat conditions of approval, and we're recommending approval of the resolution for the Joel Estates final plat.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions from council to Rebecca on this?
Rebecca, I have a question. I'm just wondering on here, how do you determine like a part of it is a private road and part is a public road? What are the factors there?
You know, this one is an interesting one because actually the road cross section is exactly the same. Just by way of a brief background, because you probably you wouldn't see something like this today without some sort of a deviation or a variance from City Council. But this was a plat that was vested to development regulations back in 2009. So there was a process that allowed them to do this. And in short, the reason why they did it is because private roads are in easements, and that square footage counts towards your overall lot size, and public roads do not. So they would have lost, I believe, one, maybe two of the lots in there if they didn't create part of that being a private road. So for most people, if you were driving down the road, it's going to look pretty much exactly the same, except the homeowners association will be responsible for maintaining that area, replacing not only the pavement, but also signs and the pavement markings for the no parking areas. And there's a different color. There's a yellow road sign that goes to identify that. That's different than the green road signs that we normally see. So it is sort of a different one.
Okay. Any other questions for Rebecca? This would be different. This would be a resolution, and that resolution number would be 979.
I'll make a motion that council authorize the mayor to sign resolution 979.
Second.
All right, motion by Melissa and a second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, item D tonight is another closed record public hearing. This is for Skagit Valley RV Park expansion of a non-conforming use and shoreline substantial development permit. And Rebecca, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So as the mayor stated, this is for a resolution for the continuation of a non-conforming use and a shoreline substantial development permit. This is a site that's located at 305 West Stewart Road. And similar to the first agenda item this evening, on July 15th, our hearing examiner held an open record public hearing, and the hearing examiner recommended approval of both requests with regard to this project. Just to give you an idea of the location of this site is located in the northwest corner of the overall city, as you can see in the map that's on the left-hand side of the screen. And then I've got an aerial map on the right-hand side showing the boundaries or the approximate boundaries of this existing RV park that's been located in the city for decades. So the screen I've got here is showing shows the existing conditions on the map on the left-hand side. You can see where all of the existing RV spaces are located. And then it's got the additional details with regard to what the applicant wishes to do. So what they have done already is they have removed, there's an existing manager / caretaker facility that was located such that it was actually touching a portion of the Dike District's levee that exists in that location. That's been removed. That was something that the applicant previously came in for, and we were very supportive of them removing that off of the site. But they do want to replace that with a new office building and a new manager caretaker facility. And they've also would like to add some additional parking, storage, landscaping, a propane fill station, and trash facilities. This requires a permit because this is a non-conforming use in the C2 zone. So anything you do to make these sort of improvements or continue this use does require that permit. And then because it is in the shoreline management district, we also require a shoreline permit, and those end up being consolidated together. So with this application, staff has found that the procedural steps have been completed, and that the application meets both the substantive requirements for the continuation of a non-conforming use and for the shoreline permit, and as such, staff is recommending approval.
Okay, any questions for Rebecca on this? I don't believe the two folks in the chat room are here for this item, and there it looks like no one else has joined. So, but any questions before I open the closed record public hearing?
I just wanted to say that this was a pretty big packet of information that was kind of fascinating, actually. I started reading it and I'm like, archaeological? They had to do all these different, I can't say that word, archaeological tests, if you will. I just found that to be fascinating. And also, just FYI, this is right kitty corner from where I work. So I've kind of been watching them do their fence repairs, and they're taking a lot of time and they're doing a really nice job. So I'm very pleased to see that someone is putting some time and investment into spiffing up this area. So I'm happy with what they're doing.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Rebecca? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the closed record public hearing regarding this particular permit, and just double checking one more time if there's anyone that has now joined and there's still no. So I'll go ahead and close that hearing. All right. Any other questions from council? If you'd like to take action, it would be resolution number 980.
I'd move approval of resolution 980.
Second.
All right, motion by Mark and a second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you so much. All right, item E tonight is a closed record public hearing regarding Viewmont Estates mobile home site plan modification and continuation of a non-conforming use. Rebecca, go ahead.
Thank you. Last agenda item for the evening. So as the mayor stated, I'm asking for approval of a resolution similar to the last item. This particular site needs a modification and a continuation of a non-conforming use. And in addition, they need approval of a mobile home park site plan. The site has a overall site address of 1120 South 25th Street. And on July 15th of this year, the hearing examiner held an open record public hearing for this project, and he recommended approval of both of these requests with conditions. This is just a aerial view of this site. You can see on the south side of the site, East Section Street that's labeled, and on the west side of the site is South LaVenture Road, and the approximate boundaries of the site are bound in blue. Just to, I'm sure you're familiar with the site, but this is what we're looking at. And really, sorry, I'm going to go back to this one first. So what the applicant was requesting, in short, was that an additional 2 mobile home sites be added to this existing developed mobile home park. So currently there is 97 existing mobile homes, and with the additional 2, of course, that would mean that there would be 99 units on this site. This existing mobile home park is non-conforming. It's non-conforming because the previous site plan that was approved only had a little over 8% open space versus the required 15%. However, the location that the 2 new home sites will be located doesn't further reduce the percentage of open space on the site. And that's because these new units are being located in an existing storage yard area of the site. And I'll show you a site plan of what that looks at. So that was important because it wasn't making the nonconformity even worse. It was just a different issue to look at. It's because they're adding the 2 new units that we need to have the site plan approved for the mobile home park. The I'm sure as you read through the staff report and you read the comments and the discussion with regard to the parking, which has definitely been a noted issue on 25th Street that's been reported to the city for many years. However, as you also read in the staff report, this development does comply with a number of parking spaces that are required, which is 2 parking spaces per unit plus guest parking. There were exhibits, you saw the parking study where the applicant very carefully went through and identified exactly where all those spaces were. And what I'm showing you here on the screen is one of the site plans that was submitted to us. And I like this one just because I think it best shows really exactly the physical development that will be going on in this area. You can see on the illustration on the left-hand side is the existing conditions. And the applicant broke that out into the lot areas, open space, and storage. And then on the illustration on the right-hand side, you can see where they're placing the 2 new units that are located up in that area, taking up a portion of that storage area. So the applicant has completed the procedural steps and meets the substantive requirements for a modification and continuation of a non-conforming use and approval of the mobile home park site plan. So similar to what the hearing examiner recommended, staff is also recommending approval of these applications.
Okay, is there any questions before we move into the hearing?
Maybe one quick one. The hearing examiner had some conditions of approval, and Rebecca, you spoke to those. And this is this ordinance in front of us, resolution, would include those same conditions?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, maybe Rebecca, if you want to stop sharing your screen, that way it gives a little more room. And then I'm gonna invite our guests in. So it looks like Ross's iPhone and Darton Riley Gibbons are gonna join us. So we'll wait for Darton's to connect to the audio, looks like. Okay, let's see. Now everyone's moving around on their screen. So, all right. So thank you to our citizens that came in for our public hearing. Thank you so much for doing our technology with us. Maybe I'll invite Darton to go ahead and speak first to this particular item. Is that all right with you, Darton?
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to, thank the council and the staff at City of Mount Vernon and the hearing examiner as well it's been a pleasure working with everybody, and I appreciate all the work you guys have done leading up to this. So I guess our proposal is to add 2 mobile home lots to an existing mobile home park, Viewmont Mobile Home Estates in Mount Vernon. And I guess the 2 lots will be added in the northwest corner near the existing RV storage. The proposal includes adding two lots, reducing the RV storage slightly, and actually providing additional screening around the edge of the park that was not there prior. And as well as landscaping along that screening area, along that 30-foot buffer on the west side of the park near the mobile homes. The mobile homes will meet all City of Mount Vernon standards, and as well as actually providing part of the hearing exam decisions 2 parallel parking stalls next to each other so that no one is blocked in. And they will meet a stormwater code, and they all fall within the guidelines and requirements of the city. There's no changes or reduction in any of the requirements for the park. The park is already below required open space, and we're not reducing that. We're actually increasing it by a very small amount, but we are increasing it from what there is. And that doesn't include actually increasing the screening area, as I mentioned before, as well. And so that's our proposal for the park.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Darton. And then Ross, did you have comments as well? I don't have your last name, so apologize.
I'm sorry. It's Rongner, Rongner.
Okay.
I'm the property management agent for the ownership that owns this community. I'm the president and owner of First Commercial Properties. We operate approximately 10,000 mobile home spaces in the Northwest. And that means, if we do our jobs correctly, we are providing a better quality of life for many families and giving them the extra step or help that they need to, obviously save money so that they can, more money for groceries and medications and such too. So, and I've been doing this for approximately 25 years. So this is not a passing interest for me. This is my passion.
Okay, great. So thank you for those comments. And we had no other folks join us in the waiting room. So I'll go ahead and close the closed record public hearing and then go back to our city council. If there's any other questions for Rebecca on this, if you would like to take action, it would be for resolution 981.
I'll make a motion that council authorize the mayor to enter into resolution 981.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. So there's a motion by Melissa and there's a second by Mark. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Darton and Ross, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you. All right. Okay, that went way smoother than I thought it was going to go. So that was good. All right, now into our next agenda item. It's item F tonight, and that is a contract amendment with PBS Engineering Environmental. And Bill Bullock, our city engineer, is here to talk to us. And there he is. Hi, Bill.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is just another piece in getting ready to begin this work. This is our North 19th emergency repair of that culvert. We awarded last week the contract to Oceanside Construction Company, and they are planning to begin work between September 7th and September 14th. They're going to start the surveying. They have some fish passage. They got to collect the fish from the culvert and upstream and downstream of the culvert. So that lets them break ground sometime during that week. So part of this with PBS Engineering Environmental, they are the designers. They're now done with their design portion of the contract. And so we're contracting with them for inspection and contract management. The city will be supplementing that with technical support and our effort from Dean Gilbert. But this allows them to, we're in a salmon bearing stream. We need to make sure that's protected. We have some slopes to work on and the stream bed mix to install. So they're going to be involved with that, obviously. And this gets the project underway so that we can, we plan to have this be about a 2 to 3 week construction period so that we can get out before winter weather and fall weather sets in. And so this is one of those pieces to get this project started and move forward with it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Any questions for Bill on this?
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute a contract amendment with PBS Engineering and Environmental Incorporated.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion by Aaron and a second by Iris. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
It's pretty fun to get these projects done and going, I have to say. So, all right, item G tonight. So this is Doug's event. We're doing a COVID-19 2020 budget impact update. And there he is. Go ahead, Doug. You're on mute though. Sorry.
All right. Can everybody see my screen here?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. How about now?
There we go.
All right. Do you see the full thing, or I can't tell? All right. Cool. Well, thank you, Mayor and hello, council members. So we have planned to update council in August, give an update on where we were as far as the impact of COVID and where we're going to be with the city budget. So tonight we wanted to give you an update of where the city is with revenues and what we believe the impact is at this point in time in the city budget. So just going briefly over the memo here. I'm sorry, I have two different things on my screen here. I want to make sure. Do you see this thing that says the employee layoffs? And okay, thank you. So as everybody is aware, we did do some employee layoffs. We had 10 full-time and 21 part-time people that we ended up laying off. We had some employee furloughs, some long-term furloughs with 6 FTE and 6 part-time positions, as well as hourly furloughs for non-reps and the Teamster union members had 56 hours of furlough, and then also the non-commissioned police were taken 48 hours of furlough. There was also a number of service changes. We canceled all special events and recreational programming in the parks, as well as suspending all the rental facilities. We had closures and some restrictions of city parks, closure of the library to general public, and then we moved to phase 2 for drive-up services. Our city offices are still closed, and all travel for employees has been canceled, and training budgets were significantly reduced, just mainly left in the legally mandated training, is all that's in there. And then development services anticipates some service level reductions in the permitting process. Other than that, then we did have some expenditure reductions, and just wanted to go over that. Right now, what you see here in the salaries and benefits for each of the departments, we are projecting about a $2.6 million reduction in budget. This includes all the furloughs and that I talked about earlier, and then vacancy savings. That 2.6 number also does not include the budgeted vacancy savings that needs to come out of there. And then operationals, we have about $592,000 identified for operations to come out. So really a total savings of $329,000. Excuse me, yeah, $3,229,000. So just a little over 10% of our entire $32 million budget. So next, talking about, and I know this is kind of hard to see, but if you look probably at the one that you have in your packet, wanted to go over a little bit of where we are as far as our revenue projections. There's still so many uncertainties in what's going on and what's happening. We do know that the the $600 is no longer there for unemployment, but there are other things that are happening. I don't know if you're all aware, but the Washington was approved for a $300 federal unemployment benefit. This was known as the Lost Wages Assistance. The approval provided retroactive funding for claimants filing claims for the weeks ending August 1st, 8th, and 15th to receive an extra $300 a week if they were certified that they were unemployed or partially unemployed due to COVID. And then they also noted this is a temporary program, and it is not the same as the $600 Federal CARES Act. So there's still a lot of unknowns about projecting these revenues on where we are. As you look on here, what I did do is on the upper darker numbers here, bolded numbers, that's our actual revenue coming in. And then the lighter ones off to the right are then what I'm projecting. And so I wanted to explain just briefly on where we are there and with the numbers that I'm coming up with. So for property tax levy, looking at we did bring in $84,000 in August. As you know, property tax comes in big in May and November. And then other than that, it kind of trickles in. So September through December, I just projected a 10% reduction off the budgeted amounts from last year. So that's what I have in those numbers. As far as sales tax goes, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but we did see a pretty high number again in August for those June collection, which was a very nice surprise again. That's $754,000 was the actual number. I think what you have in your handout was $752 because that was still a estimated number. So the remaining of the time, the September through December, what I'm doing is just projecting a 25% reduction. And looking at those numbers, I know they look a lot lower, but I'm still. I know those numbers might seem too conservative, but I just don't know. There's so many uncertainties. And in fact, if you look back at the April collection, March and April collection, that April collection was only 456,000, and that was for February, which that was before COVID even hit. So even though those numbers are quite substantially lower than what we received in July and August, that's what I put in there. So it's just a 25% reduction from the budget that we received from last year during those months. Public safety tax is just a wash. Whatever we collect goes right back out to the county. The utility tax, I put in a 10% reduction. The EMS levy is we are projecting to get everything there. And other taxes I have in there just a 10% reduction from for the remaining of the year, which is slightly lower than I had 30% reduction estimated earlier in the year. And then licenses and permits, that's just an estimate. It's not really based on much right now. I know what we saw in July and what we've been hearing for August, those numbers are quite a bit higher. But I've estimated some amounts in there. Also, you look in October, there's a higher number there. That's because that's when we get a quarterly franchise fee. So that's why that number is a lot higher. Fines and forfeits, we're really hurting in this area. I am projecting a 40% reduction for the remainder of the months. Parks and rec and library and miscellaneous, and those also are just estimates that I put in there. So EMS charges for transports, a couple things I wanted to talk about there is that green box in June, that's that 976,000. That does include the 897,000 GEMT money that was received. So in this projection that I'm talking about tonight, all of that money is in here for use for the general government. So I wanted to make that clear. I also been talking with for the state bars or accounting manual, that what coding, that is going to have to be moved down to intergovernmental. So from now on, when we receive those, you'll see it down in a separate line item. We'll still track it separately, but it's going to be down here in the intergovernmental line. But anyway, we're looking there with that amount there with GEMT at a, probably collect, between $500,000 and $600,000 over the budget number. And then charges for services and intergovernmental, both of those I put in at the 40%. So that brings us to a grand total of, instead of $5.35 million that we had previously, last time we talked about in our estimates in May, that brought it down to $2.8 million. So we're seeing a significant decrease in there. Again, still a lot of uncertainties. This is something that we will, the plan that we had, we will be reporting to you on this stuff every month now. Down below under the expenditures, there's that 592 I just showed you in the previous screen with the reductions. That does not include any of the salaries and benefits for that. So before I move on, is there any questions on this? Okay, so what does that mean for the general governmental funds? So again, remember the estimated shortfall we had last time there at that 5.3 million. There's now we're saying the $2.8 million. So that's what we're estimating that shortfall to be. Again, that includes the whole $897,000 in GEMT money. We'll be talking about these two CARES reimbursements in the next agenda item, but we are estimating the CARES reimbursement unemployment cost of $360,000, and then the CARES other reimbursements of $291,000, and then FEMA reimbursements of $33,000. And again, I'll go more into these in a little bit. And then as far as estimated expenditure reductions, our estimated vacancy savings and furloughs are about 1.7. Now this number is lower than what I just talked about because I did have to take that vacancy savings out of there. And then the 508 and 83,000 is the 592 that was in the previous screen. The one thing that you notice, I chose to take out of here that's open for discussion is we did have about $340,000 in here for savings for ER&R, taking that out of the ER&R budget. And as much as we hurt in that ER&R, I really hated doing that. So I did take it out for now, but we can talk about that. And then the other thing, like here's the offset for that 360,000 that we're going to have to pay for unemployment costs. This number I know is high. We've been working with Director Cater and looking at what these unemployment costs are going to be. We've been getting some bills, but they haven't been correct. So I think that number is going to be probably substantially lower than what we're seeing here. But for right now, I'm just leaving it at that amount. So that being said, that drops that number for estimated shortage of about $211,000. So again, a lot better than what we had estimated in May. And what I'd like to do is just leave that number at that point and see how our revenues are coming in the following months instead of making any more reductions at this point. So any questions on that?
So Doug, I just have one thought. It looks like with the reductions that we've made, with the impact not being as severe as what we had initially projected, it looks like we're still going to be using about $211,000 of fund balance to make ourselves whole. Is that correct?
That's correct. If the revenues come in like I had projected, yes.
So we did look at sales tax dropping down over the next 3 or 4 months. I guess I'm optimistic that maybe we'll see that sales tax stay up a little bit, maybe up $211,000 over the course of the year. I don't really, my opinion is this isn't the time to go in and tap fund balance. What I'm comfortable with is you've taken the money that we were going to save out of the ER&R, you've taken that out, and we've come up with this $211,000, and I'm perfectly comfortable with doing that. I think as we move forward, we'll keep an eye on where we're at. If we need to take some or a part of that ER&R money and put it back into the general fund, I think we should probably have some consideration on that so that we're not using any fund balance. But for the time being, I'm perfectly happy, just kind of monitoring where we're at and seeing if we can't close that gap on that 211,000.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what we'll do. I want to, now that we were going to just wait for this August number, and then we will report on this monthly. And so, yeah, hopefully, I'm hoping, I agree with you. I'm hoping those sales tax numbers keep coming in at least a little higher. But like I said, it just on the unknown. I'm just trying to be prepared. So
sure. Could you remind us what that ER&R number was? I know you said it, but
it was 340,000 is what we had in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay. And then also I just wanted to talk about that, there were other things, that other funding methods that we were looking at possibly helping us, like more FEMA disaster reimbursement. There's other things we could do as far as interfund loans, use of fund reserve like we talked about, and then also bank capacity. Some of the other things that we had looked at other things as far as more federal government CARES funding, that didn't happen. Possible state legislature as far as flexibility and funding sources, that didn't happen. Some Department of Justice grant, that didn't happen. So there's things there that we were kind of also counting on that didn't happen, but this is where we are right now. So, all right.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Doug, so you said you have estimated a 25% reduction for the remainder of the year for the sales tax?
That's correct.
And what's that based on?
It's just based on, we don't know what's, right now. So that unemployment, there's no longer any of that $600 that's coming. So I'm anticipating that we're going to see a drop there. What things that we have looked upon or read, and even the other cities around here, we've been pretty fortunate that number was higher. A lot of other cities aren't seeing that this past month. So I'm anticipating we're going to see that downturn in in September for the July collections. So it's just a conservative estimate. I'm just trying to look at what that number could be. I think it's pretty unrealistic to think that we're going to continue having those $700,000 numbers, and then and also looking at what we collected earlier this year. We only collected 456 in April from our February collection. So I just estimated it was 30%. I estimated back down to a 25%. And we'll just see what's happening. Again, a lot of, like I said, uncertainties. We'll see what's going to happen on the federal side, government, if there's going to be any more stimulus.
Yeah.
So at that point, that's just what I put in there. So
yeah. It's quite a bit bigger number than we've observed, but it's better to be conservative and miss the mark than underestimate it. So I appreciate the background. The one that I'm more concerned about, to tell you the truth, is the property tax levy. And I know in a first installment in April, it was pretty close to what folks estimated. But I think folks out there, the constituents, need to be aware, and folks running the budgets need to be aware of the potential cliff coming with the eviction moratoriums and all the lifting of all of those. And there's something like 20% of folks were not able to cover their July payments, whether you're a renter or own property. And then it's even more so, like 35% of the community is having trouble if they're in lower income brackets. So there's a lot of risk coming on the property tax potentially later down the road. So I don't know, those two might balance each other out, but I was just curious how you estimated those, and we'll just watch and wait and keep our fingers crossed and help people out as best we can, I hope.
All right.
I would say, Doug, I do appreciate the fact that you went a little more conservative on the sales tax. As we start going into the fall and the winter, we know a lot of the outside projects, the yard work, the home construction projects, those things are going to kind of go by the wayside. And a lot of the automotive sales and things are probably start to decrease too. So I think it was wise of you to keep that sales tax number fairly conservative.
I think Doug is going to show some of the way that sales tax breaks down, which I think council will find super interesting. And all I have to say is, your city staff made the significant amount of these cuts and sacrifices, whether it's salaries and benefits and taking the furlough as unpaid and slashing those operational budgets. So, hats off to the staff for really putting us in this position where now we're not scrambling, and we've kind of stabilized what we can do, at least to get through it. So, yeah.
All right. Just moving on, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. This is just wanted some monthly cash flow analysis. What's going on? These are in your packets too. So again, just a reminder, this one here is just for the general fund only. Remember, this is cash. So this has no reserves or anything in it. So if you look at the beginning balance at the beginning of the year, it was $1.5 million. And then we have every month the total inflows, revenues coming in, and outflows of the expenditures. So so right now for the general fund, we're right now at about $1.57 million. So just kind of shows the revenues coming in and the expenditures and where we are. Being able to, again, since some of these numbers go negative, that's why we have that reserve, because that's what kind of helps. And again, helps us to maintain, to be able to make all of our payments. And then this other one, this green one, same thing, except this is for all city funds together. So this includes all the utilities and everything. So you'll see a lot bigger number here, but that's what those are. And I'll just continue including them in your packets. I don't know if I'll present them every month, but I'll keep them in your packets. So other than that, I believe that's all I have. So
hey,
but
Doug,
I will leave. Oh, go ahead.
when were we going to show them the like those pie charts and the stuff with sales
That
tax?
that was at the end during the for the good of the order.
Okay, good. I'm like, wait, I knew there was more. So.
I decided to skip it all.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Doug. So item H tonight is just kind of a team effort with Doug and I. We're going to talk about the CARES Act. So I know that early on when we were at least given a heads up by the state that we were going to be receiving some of that funding, which super grateful to our state government. Not all states did that and shared it with their cities. You know, there's all the parameters around what you can spend this on, and then there's a contract that the council you know, authorized us to enter into with Department of Commerce. So I think in your packet, I think you've got that. So you know, some of the monies we've already spent, and I think at that very first conversation, we suggested that we take a plan for that and that we use it in different priorities. And so we're here to kind of present that refinement and really ask for some council go ahead on this. We do need to spend the money by October 31st. And so we certainly have a little more time to have discussion, but if we want to move on the full benefit of the CARES funding, you know, we are presenting what we would like to do that on. So kind of going back to the goals of what we wanted to do when we started planning financially for the pandemic is maintaining the essential staffing levels in order to achieve work demands and legal requirements and mitigate risk. I think we've done a pretty decent job on that. I think we went a little too lean in the Parks Department, to be honest, just with the maintenance of that. It is what it is, and I think they did an amazing job doing what they could do. Library, unfortunately, the cuts we made there were really essential because of the service model, and we've been able to preserve the staff there to maintain the drive-up service, which I think is going great. Other than that, we are looking at possibly bringing back even a part-time permit tech just for some relief there. Rebecca's been pulled from some of her planning duties and spending time more back in the permit reviewing world as well. So we just feel like now that we're kind of stabilized and we've been able to share the information with council that we might tweak a little. It wouldn't really affect that bottom line of what we presented, but to be able to have a few more hours there, I think would be prudent for the fall. So then we want to plan for that total revenue shortfall, and Doug presented all that information. Now we want to make sure that we're checking that back with council every single month as we get that, specifically the sales tax revenue toward the end. So making sure that if any tweaks we need to do before the end of the year. Continuing our current capital projects, which we have, communicating a unified message to staff and the public, determine that use of fund balance if needed, and then support for our small business and hometown economy. So remember, that's what we've been keeping in mind. So one thing I also wanted to point out in balancing the funding decisions that we've made and how we've tried to prepare the use of the CARES funding responsibly is to really take a look at what help the city has been able to receive and what help business, residents, homeless services, and other nonprofits, at least opportunities that they've had. Because I know there's a concern that we really want to be able to help our community as well. So the CARES funding, as you know, is $1,072,200, and a lot of that other assistance we were thinking we might be able to use hasn't materialized. So whether that was the legislature giving us flexibility or more federal funding and stuff like that. So it's really only the CARES funding, it feels like, has come to help us maintain services. And I wanted to make sure that we were clear that there was help that the council has submitted for our community. The House Bill 1406, that'll come up in a minute, so I'm not trying to sort of blow the news on that, but if that were allocated, that would go directly to rental assistance. The city's CARES funding, so we did use 30,000 of that million to go to homeless vouchers with hotel funding, and so fortunately, as council knows, Commerce came in with even more money, so we did that partnership with the county and the city, and then allocated a significant more for hotel vouchers between now and the end of the year. And then the city CDBG funds. So council designated that to go to rental assistance and micro business grants. And so the little bracket on the side is that $285,849. That's gone from city funds directly out to help support the community as well. The little green box just tried to capture that there were federal programs. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on how effective those were, but there were federal programs. There was the increased unemployment, stimulus checks, and business programs. And then Skagit County did commit that some of their CARES funding to small business, which was amazing. And they, I think, did a fantastic job of spreading that out in the entire county to help business. So just wanted to show that we're trying to find that balance when we're suggesting allocation of funds. And then the next slide, and this was in your packet, and so I thought I'd just go over this. You do have all the directors on the line today. If you have specific questions, I want to make sure they're available to you. So for the CARES allocation, that priority one was to make sure we could cover the unemployment liability, knowing we were going to have to lay off folks and they would be claiming unemployment, and the city had some liability there. And then the federal paid leave entitlement, some folks use that, so there is you'll see that the funds listed. The priority two was in the slide before on that reimbursement. So the dedicated portion of salaries and employees dedicated to COVID response. So that's everything from my time that's been significantly allocated to Doug, to Chief Bryce, to Scott Horton in fire, and our nurse that we've, so we've kept spreadsheets of all of those times and then been able to assign the value of those times to that. So that's how you see that $191,000 number. The protective equipment. So we get 75% reimbursement from FEMA, but then there is still 25%, and we're allowed to claim that to be reimbursed through this source of funding. So that's where you see that. And then the priority three was we'll go through these. So these have changed a little bit, just kind of based on what we thought we needed and then kind of what we've really realized we needed. And so you'll see the technology equipment. That's really everything for us to be safe in either telecommuting, and then the first responders, which I want to specifically call out of that. Server upgrades efficiently to use remote servers. So all of you know that getting onto Citrix is kind of a pain in the behind. And so I asked Kim to please spec out, because it's old, they're older servers and platforms. And so I asked him to spec out, get us the best remote server that we can find right now, because I think this is a long-term type of condition. We will have a mixture, I think, of remote telecommuting for times to come. And so we need to have the ability to do that work. And so that's important. And then different licensing that comes into mind. So one thing I wanted to mention is that council members, we'd like to get you all new devices, and we'd also like to do some licensing for you similar to first responders. So the computers that officers have in their vehicles have access to the city networks and things like that. So if we were able to sort of reconfigure council devices, you would have a very easy one-click get into your packets, get into the emails, which I think would be much more efficient for you to do your work. So that's included in that. And then the first responder piece is that if we were able to purchase devices for every police officer had their own device. Currently, they share laptops in their vehicles. They're touching everything differently. They have the roll call room has all the shared computers there. It would be much safer for them from a public safety standpoint to have their own devices with their own keyboards. Kind of like 911, you may or may not know that all those dispatchers have their own keyboards. They unplug and plug in. They don't touch anyone else's stuff, and they've done that for a while, but it's particularly poignant now. So Kim has a gigantic spreadsheet that we can send you detail of everything. But what he has outlined with Scott Worley in going through all of our needs is $325,000 that would go directly to technological equipment. Jump in if you have any questions I go through. I don't want to go. So video chat systems. So those of you know that we have the red phone at the police department, and when folks come in, they pick up the phone. We'd love that to be a person's face, and we'd love that to have the ability to even talk to an officer, either inside the department or even if they're safely parked in their cars out in the field. And so we've priced those units out for the police court campus, for City Hall, our library, our Parks Administration Office, and fire stations 1, 2, and 3. We think that just even moving into the future would be a good service. I think we've talked about the fingerprint scanner before. You may remember that our police department does fingerprinting for not only, say, concealed pistol license, but for licensing for teachers and all of that. So to have that scanner, which we currently are being borrowed once a week from the sheriff, is something we think we would like to get. The library would like to have 5 Wi-Fi access points, and Isaac will talk about that a little bit more in an update. But we're doing these small little libraries in our parks right now. You may have seen them. They're put in as a community service with books, and so if we were to able to establish Wi-Fi points at those little library kiosks in our parks, that might open up the ability for students that are doing remote learning to be able to use our park system and have access to some more Wi-Fi spots than what they currently have. So that's what that means there. The community-wide information magazine, I think I probably talked about this before, that we had priced out the ability to send an informational magazine to every household in the city. This would have public health information, even tips on as we move into the school year, and then other city information. We just haven't had this time to, it kind of comes from my office to just work on that, but we'd like to do that this fall. UV light cleaners. Some of you may have some of these in your homes. This is something that hospitals have generally used quite a bit. Schools, ambulances are equipped with these. Airliners are now using UV light sanitation. So we've priced out some units specifically for places that would be coming up for public use in the fall. So courtroom, as they start court. And then if we can get council meetings, of course, back there. So to have 2 units at our police court campus that can alternate between courtroom and then our squad room to keep our first responders as sanitized as possible. That sounds bad, but you know what I mean. To have 2 units in our library, if we're able to somehow have a small percentage of capacity of public coming into our library, then we could have those on a nightly basis there. And the same thing for City Hall. If we're starting to welcome the public back for limited type use, we would have the units there. Chris Phillips has done a lot of work on researching that and making sure that they're from reputable companies that supply places like hospitals. And so we would like to get those. The supplies for the library, that's actually a reimbursement. That's funding that's been spent out of their budget already for brown bags and the equipment that they've needed to do the sanitizing of books when they come in, but then package them up for that takeout service. Subscriptions for Zoom, that would be a reimbursement as well. The hotel vouchers would be reimbursement since we've already sent that. And then the cleaning contract is our last item. Some of it would be reimbursed. The county, as you may remember, had pitched in to help for a couple of months, but we would like to continue that through the end of October just to help our park staff with cleaning of the restrooms. So that comes down to basically spending all of that $1,072,200. But we definitely, of course, need council approval to kind of work through that plan. And so that's why we wanted to present it for conversation tonight. So, questions?
Mayor, if I could step in just for a second here.
Please, Doug, go ahead.
One of the things that the mayor mentioned earlier that I just wanted to bring up again is that this is a reimbursable grant, and it is from March 1st through, like the mayor said, October 31st. So we have to have all this, everything here purchased by October 31st. So we, need to kind of start moving on it. And then the last invoice that they will accept from the city for reimbursement has to be in by November 15th. So I just wanted to bring that point up that, that we are on a deadline here for October 31st to have everything purchased.
Thanks, Doug.
So I've kind of looked this over pretty thoroughly, and while I may personally have a couple of questions about particular items, or question whether the need's there or not, I think staff has made the case that those items are needed, and I think that that overall it's a good plan, and we should probably move forward with this. It is a reimbursable expenditure. these are items that obviously we need within the city. We need to deal with the COVID issues. We need to deal with employee safety, and keep the public safe while they're in the city, on the city properties. The only question that I have here is that we were allocated 1,700,000, or excuse me, 1,072,200, and we look like we have a wish list of $1,073,082. I'm sure we're going to prioritize and cut that back just a little bit.
Yes, for sure. A few things are pretty detailed on, we know exactly what it'll be down to the sales tax, but some are still, yeah.
I think we'll also have some discretion too when we get to that unemployment liability too. There might be some things to look at there too. So
That was the question I was going to ask. It seemed you were suggesting it may be significantly less, and I was wondering if you needed a bigger list so that you had discretion to work within that, or you'll just come back to us if it's more than we thought, more available.
Yeah, I think the second that we know if there's more availability, we would come back. The only other thing that we just couldn't afford is using some of the funding to change into more of the touchless types of equipment. So whether that's slide locks on doors and things like that, I know a lot of other cities have used it for that, or it could certainly be something that if council wanted to go back, to the community, then whatever is left there. The slide lock systems are quite expensive, so I don't think we'd come up with anywhere close to what we would need. So that's for another year.
It seems to me when we first started this about, 4 or 5 months ago now, there was a priority list, and we were going to work through that priority list, and I don't know if there's anything that was on that list back then that's been dropped off of this list, or is it all still included in here?
No, we had looked at an ambulance because at the time it seemed like, do we need a specialized ambulance specifically to serve a COVID type of infectious patient? And so that's been taken off, not only because we've figured out that we've got it with PPE and how we're doing things, and then also GEMT funding materialized too, and so there's other options for that.
Okay, and I don't know if anybody else caught the infrared infrared sanitation items. I did ask whether we need any on the ambulances, and lo and behold, they're already there.
Yeah.
I agree with Mark. I think this is a really well laid out plan, and I would support it 100%.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I'd move that council authorize the CARES funding plan and proposal.
Oh, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Bark and a second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll be back again with a lot of the more detail at the end of, well, even if it's even sooner, if we get those reports from unemployment to see if there's any extra. So we'll let you know as soon as we know that. Okay. And then just finally, you've seen this graphic before. I think what I would add to that is that we just talk about it every month moving forward. I think we're just stabilized where we're at. I don't really see the ability to have any service restoration or the ability based on the governor's phasing to even have service restoration yet. And so we'll be as flexible as we can in the next few months. So any questions on that, just bringing things back to you in a timely manner? Okay.
The only issue that we may have is depending on when we actually receive the revenues for sales tax, because I know that's the biggest one that people are looking at. We normally don't get them till sometimes, after sometimes to the 24th or something like that. I see October, our meeting is, well, no, I guess we might, but that could be an issue and when they were coming in, but we'll have some estimates. So I get some pretty good estimates from the Department of Revenue that we can use, but we'll
so
keep them
Doug,
updated.
Doug, in those cases, can you give us the estimates, and then when the final numbers come out, just drop it in the email so we can kind of pencil those in to our
Absolutely.
worksheets? Thank you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to confirm something and ask a question. And we've been talking a little bit about when we can start ramping up, or to some degree, and address some of the service reductions that we've seen. And so, Mayor, I heard you say that you thought we could do something at development services sooner, a few hours starting. And I also heard you mention something about parks and enrichment potentially. Certainly, the parks look great, but could use a little bit more help, and they have other programs they're running. And so I'm just curious what that timeline and process looks like.
Yeah. So the development services, the revenues that they are bringing in are doing well, and so I think that we could make that adjustment to have a couple, like maybe up to 20 hours of just some help with permit. With just getting permits processed. And so that's what we would be looking at, is to possibly bring back one of our furloughed employees just on a short-term basis to just get some of those things moving. I want to be clear, we're not delayed, with permits, like all the inspections are happening and all that. It's just there's a backlog of clearing permits, like at the very end, we kind of go in and clean it up and stuff like that. So that's what Chris and I were talking about today, looking at that revenue. So if it's more, like if we're seeing that revenue now more, in that we would do that. We would bring back those extra hours. That's what we're trying to figure out how to do, but not impact that bottom line of that fund use and the number that we showed you today. Does that make sense? The other thing that we're bringing back, and this was just like an unusual, like, oh really? So Andy Hansen, who runs our solid waste division, they are having a significant problem with parking, illegal parking, and trying to collect and get garbage trucks in. So normally our parking enforcement person, Carrie, she does a lot in our downtown area, but she does a lot in the neighborhoods and keeps people from. And essentially, she has been on furlough. And so Andy called and said it's worse and worse and worse, and now it's impacting getting trucks in for collection. So because it's specific to solid waste, we're going to be bringing Carrie back, paying at it out of the solid waste utility on just a limited hours per week to try and help get that back to where it's not impacting the service. So we're trying to make tweaks as we go. So those are just two examples. With the parks, though, I don't see an ability to bring anyone back between now and the end of the year. So it's kind of just, it is what it is. And I hesitate to even look at doing that. Simply we're making it through like the bulk of the summer surge, where we normally have all of our temporary employees helping us, the seasonal employees, and moving into winter. So where we're not cutting the grass because it's going dormant and things like that. So I've kind of resisted trying to bring anyone back in parks, simply because number one, it would be maybe for 1 month. And I think that we've kind of muddled through as best as we can. And then there is no general fund revenue. Like we didn't figure that in when we presented the bottom line number tonight, that we would bring anything back that would affect general fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for the overview. It makes sense. I mean, I just see, lack of access to some services at the parks here and there, and it'd be nice to find some way to address that. You've explained the difficulties well. I wish there was some other way. So maybe we can think about that over time. Thanks.
Yeah. It's just a sucky year for parks, to be honest. And just trying to even explaining people why we're trying to make these decisions. We are going to be removing some volleyball nets in some of the parks because of just, people aren't being smart, and we can't have 25 people gathered at a time. So we're going to be doing some of the more things now this week, and we'll get more complaints. We'll just keep going. So.
Hey, Jill, I would just like to chime in that I did drive past Bakerview again this weekend.
Yeah, I did too.
And both nets were being used with no masks and not adhering to a lawful order. So unfortunately, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And we've had police and park staff try and educate, and I, when park staff are met with profanities and all that, then there's just a time where you have to just take the nets down. So, yep. So okay, but overall, I think we're doing pretty good. So. Okay, thank you so much for the help on the CARES Act funding plan. We'll move into the good of the order. So under the COVID-19 pandemic response and discussion, generally, I see if there's anything from our chiefs. I don't really think there is anything from them tonight. I will say the latest news that I had on infection rates was that last week was like 85 people per 100,000, and this week it's dropped down to I think 73 per 100,000. I think we still need to get to 25, but it's really nice to see that maybe some of our things are trending down, so that we can move a little bit more into phase 3. So I don't know if any of the chiefs have anything they want to add around that. Doesn't seem that they do. So okay. So we'll go into the 2021 budget planning discussion. So go ahead, Doug. Doug, you're muted though. There you go.
It probably sounded better that way, huh? Wanted to go over our agenda tonight and wanted to talk about the revenues that I talked about earlier, our 2021 budget planning discussion. We want to have the discussion on COLA, House Bill 1406 discussion, and then my favorite topic, the 2019 audit. So just moving forward. So the sales tax through August, this is just a graphical portrait of where we are right now. As you can see, July and August, we collected that 772,000 in July and 750 in August. So that this is the green line. You can see we've had some big ups and downs. So hopefully we'll still keep that on the higher end there, but that's where we are right now. The blue line right here is last year. So we'll see where we're going to go with that. Just a little more detail on that. So of the $5 million we collected so far this year, broken down by the NAICS codes, you can see here that some of the bigger ones are construction. We brought in about 477,000, which is just a little over 9% of our total revenue came from construction. Wholesale trade, 360,000, and then the retail trade, which I'll spend a little more time on, is about 58%. So that's a large one there. And then down here, accommodations and food services, about $370,000. Now, I believe I put in your packet, not in your packets, but in your drive, all those different graphs of each of those. So you'll be able to look at those. And if you have any questions, let me know. Breaking out just the retail trade, that almost 58% of it, this is where we're looking at that. And so as you can see here, the big one here, as Mark, I think, alluded to earlier today too, was the motor vehicles and parts dealers. They were over $1 million, or 21% of our total sales tax revenue for the year that came in so far. Was just from that motor vehicle and parts dealers. So that's a substantial amount there. Our building materials and garden equipment and supplier dealers, $388,000, which was 13% of that retail trade, or almost 7.6% of our total revenue. Food and beverage stores, it's 4% at 205. General merchandise here for 414,000. And then miscellaneous store retails at 345,000. And then just kind of a pie chart here showing again that retail trade, which is 58% of the sales tax. Again, here's that big piece of that pie is that motor vehicles. So 37% of that retail, and then followed by the general merchandise at 14%, the building materials and garden equipment for 13, and then the 12 for the miscellaneous store retailers. So
Doug, I was going to jump in on that motor vehicle and parts dealers. That includes all of our RV dealerships.
I believe it does, yes.
And so if you've kind of read some of the, there have been some articles about the sales of RV and how they've been so significant. And so I'm just speculating that we're benefited from that by all the ones in South Mount Vernon. And then unfortunately, it doesn't really break out what's online sales. But I think we could probably take a look at that between the general merchandise and the miscellaneous store merchandise that, hopefully we're seeing the benefit of those online sales. So.
All right. So just moving on, just going through our normal charts that I show you. Again, going back to talking about our sales tax. In August last year, we brought in $700,000. This month or this year, we brought in 754, so 53,000 over what we did last year at this month. We're still down about $80,000 from last year. But overall, we're sitting pretty good. We're about 108,000 below where we should be based on the $7.8 million budget. So we're just with inside that green line there. So hopefully that number will stay there where we are. As far as the property tax, again, we're pretty darn close to where we're supposed to be. We're just about $2,000 behind where we were with our budgeted amount. We've collected almost $20,000 over what we did last year at this time. TBD, again, this falls with sales tax. So again, here we are, we're down from last year about $8,500. So again, coming in extremely close. And we're right up there. Collected $1.2 million so far of our $1.8 million budget. And then REIT 1 and 2, these are combined numbers. This one's kind of going up and down all the time here as you see large amounts in January. That one just was an awesome month of $196,000. But then last month again, in July and August, we had 142 and almost $160,000. So overall, we're about $32,000 over where we were last year at this time. Budgetarily, we were budgeted $1.4 million and we collected 970, so we're about $68,000 or 7.5% above where we were planned to be with budget. So that's good. Let's hope that keeps up too. And then lift. If everybody remembers what this lift is, we can collect a maximum of $500,000 each year. And this is that we use to put in for our library commons project. And so this is really an interesting chart and how we're going to have to do this here because it's based off of the state fiscal year. It's $500,000 on the state fiscal year, which isn't the same ones that we were. So we started collecting it at the end of last year. And then in March is when we actually reached the $500,000 from the state. So then in April, May, and June, we got absolutely nothing. And then in July, we started collecting again for this new fiscal year. So we will, I believe we're going to hit the $500,000, but actually we're going to probably have $570,000 this year, just again, based off on how that amount comes in. So as you can see, we have some, when they stop, as soon as we reach that $500,000, it's going to stop. All right, so if there's not any questions on that, I'll just move forward on our kind of our budget planning where we are right now. So I did receive all the budgets from all the finance directors and managers, and so I just have everything in from everybody. So now I'm starting to put everything together. We're working right now on the salaries and benefits and ER&R and all that fun stuff and all the transfers. And so we got a lot of work to do before we can bring it forward to you. But wanted to talk a little bit today about what the approach that we would like to take and see if you guys are in agreement with that. What we would like to do is we want a budget similar to our 2020 budget. And then, but not like on January 1st, start bringing everybody back in. We're going to see how our revenues are. And then if revenues start picking up, then we would start actually, bringing the people back in, start bringing our services back up. And so, we still would manage to our budget based off the revenues. It's kind of hard to figure what our 2021 budget would be. So that's what we'd like to do, is just kind of keep it similar. Obviously, there's going to be some things that are going to have going to be vary, but that's kind of the approach that we would like to do for our budget. As far as capital projects go, the public works projects, we're going to proceed with those basically because of the funding comes from different sources. Our shop building, we would like to move forward on that. So we need to figure out some different funding models on what that might be as far as the impacts to the general fund, and looking at some options or interfund loans or whatever, so we can get that going for Gary.
Doug, can I stop? I wanted
Absolutely.
to talk just really quickly about the shop, and just remind council sort of where we were at with that. So we're talking about Gary Owens and the mechanics that take care of our fleet. And I think we've either shown pictures or you've been there, and you know that he can't fit the vehicles in the building he has. So there's a lot of work that is done outside on the ground in the rain. And so we had wanted to take a look at adding a bay or two so that he could fit in a garbage truck, like just to work on and things like that. So what I had asked ESCO to do was just keep moving on that. And so their internal staff have worked on what engineering would be, working with, building officials, like kind of doing all that internal work. And we have spent a little bit money on some geotechnical work. And so the next thing that we could potentially do is literally go out to bid and just see what the pricing is. There's guesstimate, and ESCO loves his back of the napkin numbers, but really until we have the number, we don't have anything to bring council to kind of think about. But what that would be is this particular dollar amount, let's say it's 700,000, 6 or 700,000. The utilities, how we parsed it out over all of the uses of it. And so utilities would pick up certain portions, and so the general fund would be just slightly over 50%. So we would be looking at, say, 350 to try and make it happen. And we've done in the past where we've done interfund loans where we've just sort of done it, and then we kind of pay those interfund loans back, maybe 50,000 a year as we can do it. So we're really, really trying to look for a way to make that project happen. And so we'd like to even go out and look and see what bids might come back in the next month, and just then be able to come back to you and talk through that. So that's kind of where we're at. If you have any questions about that or concerns, that we're just kind of pushing forward a little bit on that. Okay. So kind of more to come. We'll kind of see what the numbers come back. ESCO, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would look at kind of like a, I don't know if it's a kit building is right, but like pre-engineered buildings, right? Is that it?
No,
I forgot what you had told me the name.
No, that's what we call them, pre-engineered buildings. Yes.
Yeah. So nothing fancy, just like the steel things.
Yeah. Your normal
very industrial.
Steel stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for ESCO on that? Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry, Doug.
Oh, that's no problem. And then the Mount Vernon Commons project, just so everybody knows right now, we have about $2.8 million available funding in that fund right now, but that includes the $1 million of the Commerce grant. So, we move forward on talk about what we want to do on moving forward with that. And I don't know, Mayor, if there's anything you wanted to add into that one.
No, I think we've got one little thing we're figuring, and then by hopefully the third week in September, we can have robust decisions on the project.
You go. There we go. And then Fire Station 1 and the remodel of 2 and 3, I think there will be some discussions there during the committee meeting. So we'll have more information on that. Back to the budget approach as far as, services and activities, we're thinking there still probably wouldn't be any recreational activities or special events in our parks fund for next year. Again, limited library with no public access for the library. And then we really need to talk about what we're going to do as far as adopting a cost of living adjustment or a COLA for next year. So that's kind of the approach that we're looking at taking. I don't know if if that sounds reasonable, or if obviously I'll be bringing a lot of this information to you in the future, but just wanted to let you know that's kind of the approach that we're going to move forward with if everybody's okay with that.
I think the approach is fine. I think one of the things we need to be conscientious of is we know that things are still going to be slower than they were or than they were projected to be this year. We know that there's going to be probably the first 6 months of next year will be a real telling time for us as far as how COVID reacts, how the economy responds, what activities are going to be allowed, what activities aren't going to be allowed. That all works into our budgeting process as far as, if we can't have more than a certain number of people in a park area, there's certain activities that aren't going to happen. I think we need to be conscientious of folks that are still either out of work or underemployed, those that are paying property taxes. And I would challenge the city council moving forward that as we go through this budget process, that we look to live within our current means and not look to raise any property taxes.
All right.
So I guess the hardest part is not projecting, what the first 6 months of 2021 is going to be, because I think most people, experts, are saying it's going to be it may be a rough fall, winter. But I'm wondering about summer and fall, winter 2021, and if they're going to look the same or not, and we just don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens with vaccines and herd immunity and all that. But I don't know, the idea of no recreational activities or special events or library for the whole year is a tough pill to swallow.
I'll clarify that. So what we want to do is that's probably just kind of wasn't written well.
Yeah, right.
Fund that we would do things, and then kind of as we do the quarters, if we have that funding restoration, then absolutely want to bring that back if we can, for sure. I think it would be great to have maybe a celebration in August of next year with a children's art festival and a back to school, and that would be amazing, right? So that wasn't really worded. Sorry, that's exactly what we meant. Just suspend things until we can do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and I apologize for that. So that's what I meant. We want a budget very similar to what we have for 2020, but then not start expending that budget till we see what the revenues are coming in and move forward slowly as the revenues are coming in. All right. So the next agenda item is a COLA discussion that I'm going to hand off to Director Cater.
Thank you. Good evening. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about cost of living adjustments for non-represented employees. As you're aware, the cost of living adjustments are negotiated for union represented positions, but the non-reps don't have that opportunity to negotiate. So I wanted to start off with the basics, what a non-represented employee is, and that's an employee not covered by the union. There's 75 positions in the city that span across all the departments. And non-represented employees, including management employees, have the option to become represented if they seek to unionize. So there's just a select few that could be exempted from that, but they could elect to become unionized if they decide they want those bargaining rights. The consumer price index is typically how we determine what a cost of living adjustment is going to be. The consumer price index basically measures goods and services and measures inflation. There are two indexes. The U is for all urban consumers, and then the W is for urban wage earners and clerical workers. So the CPIU is a more general index, and it encompasses about 87% of the United States population. Any questions on those? All right, so then again, you know that a cost of living adjustment is a COLA, and that's an increase in an employee's salary to counteract inflation. It also helps prevent salary compression between a non-represented supervisor and a represented employee. And then other side benefits that aren't listed there is obviously it maintains employees' morale and sometimes boosts productivity. And I know you're probably all thinking after the budget discussion tonight is if it's a good idea during a pandemic. And it is, because again, you know that the represented employees are going to be negotiating their cost of living adjustments. Several of the unions have binding arbitration. So whether we feel we have the funds to provide a COLA, an arbiter could say we do. And also it just, if we don't provide cost of living adjustments for non-reps, we'll have a compounding compression issue. And you know, inflation is going up, so we all have to abide by the inflation, and we need to be able to pay for our goods and services as well. There is language currently in our personnel policies that speak to how cost of living adjustments are determined. And basically the mayor can propose and the city council may grant an across the board pay adjustment, raising the salaries of all positions by a specified amount. It's very generic. It's non-specific as to how the mayor would make that proposal, what information she would pull from to make that proposal to you. And so this is just a couple of discussion points or options. This is proposed language. And so the first proposed language talks about how the mayor could use the CPIU, Seattle Tacoma Bellevue June to June Index, to make her proposal to council regarding non-represented COLA increases. The second option is the mayor makes the proposal based on the bargaining unit's average cost of living adjustments for the year. So if all the bargaining units are settled and we know what the average cost would be, she would propose that percentage amount versus using the CPIU. Any questions? I know I went through that real quick.
And we're not looking for decisions, but this just seems to be an item that if we had some consistency or some direction, it would make budget discussions just a little bit easier to talk through. That was the idea. I was actually inspired by George from the PUD, who we were talking about it, and the PUD recently adopted the ways, like a proposal of how they're going to look at them. So that was just, it was like, oh, that's interesting. So I had Aaron think about that.
So I think we've had discussions in the past about COLAs, and we've always talked about the CPIU when we're looking at COLAs, especially for non-represented employees. And I've always felt that it would be good to have some kind of a matrix or a schedule that we could look at and use that as a basis to justify the COLAs. So I think we're on the right track of being able to pinpoint it down to a certain index and utilize that year in and year out.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I guess just process question. So is this a policy language proposal that would get put in writing somewhere?
Yeah, it would be added to the personnel policies.
And so just to build on Mark's a little bit, that's my memory too, but it also seems like it is relevant what their peers who happen to be covered by unions are getting, because it is about, top and bottom and compression. And so to me, it's not one or the other. It's all of those are factors. It could be and or between those two topics. And I'd like to hear both of those pieces of information and know how the proposal was justified in the face of those two things. to be clear, the standard, index of inflation and what unions have negotiated seem relevant to our decision.
I think you're right. You're right, because both things are all taken into consideration when we're going into contract negotiations anyway. So it is a blending of everything of what they're using with the indexes and then what the settlement in the contract is for, because they're not always the exact same either. So.
Right.
It's just an introduction. So we thought we'd introduce it as we just kind of think about how Doug and I are going to prepare the proposal for you. And so we'll come back again. And if you come across ideas or policies that you're familiar with, please let us know, because these are just two of the ideas that we had thought through.
So we're starting out with a 10% increase, and then we're going to go from there. All right, moving on.
So funny, Doug. Thanks, Aaron.
House Bill 1406 discussion. Just kind of a reminder, this is the local state share tax for affordable and supportive housing. It allows the local jurisdictions to impose a local state shared sales tax and use tax to fund affordable housing. The potential city revenues projected by the Department of Revenue is about $62,000. City Council adopted a resolution of intent to adopt legislation on January 22nd, and then Council adopted an ordinance to authorize the tax on January 10th, 2020. So the Department of Revenue did begin collecting the tax on April 1, 2020.
August. And you're in April, Doug. That's okay. We all know.
Did I say April?
Yeah,
I can't read. All right, it's late. And I'm just proud to say that we've already collected 16 cents, so we're doing good. Anyway, Mayor, I'll let you take it.
So the committee, so I want to thank Melissa and Gary and Richard for coming in and just talking through it, because they have a recommendation to the council on what we need to do with this. And so I just want to give them an opportunity to share their thoughts and what guidance that they'd like the full council to give us on what to do with that funding. Any of you want to speak, Richard or Melissa?
Go ahead,
Melissa,
Richard.
Go ahead. I see. She's already muted herself, so I guess that's me. Thank you. So we've had several conversations about 1406, and it's a really unique funding opportunity for local governments to look at how we increase affordable housing for the sort of middle income folks who are making 60% of area median income. And so we had 9-10 months ago, before COVID was a thing, we had a lot of discussions about how we might propose to do that and utilize these funds creatively. But in the interim, COVID did hit, and the world today looks a lot different than it did, when we started these conversations. So what we've been talking about more recently is just the emergency crisis situation in front of us, and the fact that, somewhere between 20-30% of our community is having very real difficulties staying in their existing housing. And so the first part of the proposal for the council's consideration is to allocate the first part of the funding, I'll talk about the second part in a minute, towards emergency eviction prevention programs, such as those run by Community Action, who are already doing a lot of that work for us. So that would be a way to make sure that we have a comprehensive eviction prevention program, and support that and support our community as we fight through this crisis. So that was sort of part number one. The second part is that the council has and staff and mayor worked for a long time with partners at the county and Catholic Community Services and Housing Services to try to stand up the permanent supportive housing development on College Way. Is about 70 units of housing that would go in there, and that's really for those that are at the most risk and have the most difficulty. And so not only is it's housing, it's also wraparound services for the community, for those members. And so as a result, it does cost a lot to run the facility, operations and maintenance. And that's the biggest concern at this point. They have the money to build the facility, but they don't have the money to currently operate and maintain the facility without a partnership. And so the county has reached out to the city to ask if we would consider allocating resources from House Bill 1406 to, it's not going to pay for all the operations and maintenance, but it will help offset and show our contribution partnership to help them. So they would be hopefully up and running and operating the facility. A rough guess would be January of 2022. And so could we enter into an agreement with the county to commit these resources starting at that date when they could use them? And so that's a proposal. And then between now and then, utilize that money to comprehensively prevent evictions to the degree possible by contracting that money to, for instance, somebody like Community Action who's already doing that kind of program. So that's it in a nutshell. And I'm sure I glossed over something important, Melissa and Jill, and Gary if he was here.
No, I think
Thanks, Richard, for articulating that so well. I knew you would do it much greater justice than I did, and I think you did a very good job. Thanks.
so. What I was wanting to do with council is kind of get that full direction. What we would do then is take the collections until like certificate of occupancy. So like the folks move into that project whenever that date is. We would go ahead and interface with the county and with Catholic Now, just to kind of so that they have some surety as they move forward and they're trying to get all their planning in place that would be coming when their occupancy was there, and then take the balance, as Richard said, and have it go toward rental assistance and basically eviction protection. So does that seem like a plan for everybody?
So first off, I'd like to thank the committee for getting together and making these recommendations to council. I know a lot of folks don't realize all the things that council does, but a lot of times council members have to take time out of the middle of their work day and meet and have these committees and come up with these kind of structures and recommendations to council. So I just appreciate all of you that took your time and put these forward. I think moving forward, I think it's a great plan. We can help some folks out now, and we can plan for the long-term permanent supportive housing. So I think this is a great plan. So thank you, everybody.
I agree. I think that we had talked about that sort of at the very beginning of the concept of let's use the money before the project is going for something in our, that we can do ourselves. But when the project or the permanent supportive housing project was going, that we would be able to support them with that point, whatever the number is, 1406 money. So no, I think that's a great, thanks committee. That's a really great idea.
Okay, super. Then we will move forward on that, and then Doug will, watch that collection as it comes in, and at the right time where there's more than 16 cents, we'll make sure that goes to where it needs to go. And then I'll work with the county and Catholic Housing and see what we want to come up with, which is even if it's like a memorandum of understanding or something. So, okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then just to end on an up note, I'm going to give an audit follow-up on our audit. Starting out, just kind of the good news. I'm not going to read all this, but the audit opinion was, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial positions of the governmental activities, et cetera. So the city did complete a comprehensive annual financial report, and we did send it to the Governmental Finance Officers Association, and to hopefully receive the city's 21st and 14th consecutive year GFOA CAFR award. So if you guys haven't read this CAFR out there yet, take a look at it. It's about 140 pages of just pure excitement. So anyway, it's there. I know the auditors has sent you guys all the packets of the final audit packet, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at all of it, but you know, as it stated in the audit, that this was not a normal audit. It was like nothing I've ever been through in all my 30-some years. It was very difficult since all the city employees and also all the members of the audit team were all working from home. It was impossible to, you know, walk them through things and show them detail, and there was errors and misunderstandings on both sides, and just a lot of confusion. So, you know, we're not always happy when the auditors are here, but I won't say that anymore. I'd much prefer to have them here when we're there doing an audit than not. So, anyway, but just some of the things that did happen. We did have a management letter on. The first one was on utility billing. And so this one, you know, they said, although the city staff had an understanding of expected internal controls, the city did not have policies in place for utility billing, et cetera. They also stated that while significantly reduced, the city has about $70,000 in outstanding overdue accounts that have not been written off or collected on, and that the city has taken measures to protect its IT systems from risk, but opportunities exist to strengthen its IT security. This one was something that was extremely disappointing getting from the auditors, because we've been spending so much time on our collections. As you guys are aware, the last 3 years, we've collected over $600,000 in past due accounts. They're correct. We didn't have a really strong policy and all this stuff, but we have very strong procedures on manuals on all these things that we were doing. One of the things that I was not doing, and I'll take responsibility for it, is when we've been sitting down with the residents that can't pay for some of their utility bills, I was setting up payment plans for them, and I was not charging interest on those payment plans. We were just trying to get them as much as they can pay to get these in. That's one of the things that they had talked about, that we weren't charging interest. Although we were charging penalties and also additional lien fees were being charged on that too. So anyway, there's still some stuff that we're wording in our policy that I think some of the penalties that are on that can also make up some of those interests. But that's one of the things that we're going to be working on. They are correct that we do have some things that I do need to bring forward to council to write off. I'm going to bring forward a list of probably close to $80,000 or $90,000 in write-offs. These are old accounts that are outside attorney, and we have not been able to collect. There's uncollectible accounts, and I'm talking many years ago. So I will be bringing those in. So anyway, this is one area that we spent a lot of time on the past few years. So it's kind of disappointing to see that. We also, well, was there any questions on that one before I move on?
I was going to ask on these old accounts, the $80,000 that you referred to, are these people still owners of property within the city, and could we put a lien on that property for those monies, or they sold that property and it's just not collectible at all?
Yeah, these are old accounts that the properties have been sold. We have liens on all the accounts that are past due that are still in owned by the owners. These are ones that are many years old that probably have been sold several times since, and we just need to get them off the books. I knew they were there, but we were, I haven't brought them forward to get these collected. So you'll be seeing, and you'll get a list of all of them. But no, we can't put liens on these. These are past ones.
I have to say, Doug, that I'm really impressed that you were able to collect $600 and some odd $1,000 in past due accounts. And I find it kind of interesting. Before that explanation that you gave, I thought it was kind of interesting that they would suggest that we just write things off if it's uncollectible. You know what I mean? Yet they don't want you to try to collect it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that brings up a point. The first response we got from them on this, that number that they were saying that that $69,000, it was over 300 and some $1,000. And we argued that because we are still working with those customers on collecting those. So I'm not planning on writing those off, but so they did agree and they did bring that down. But yeah, that's a good point. We've been spending, my staff, we've been putting a lot of time into this and really working with trying to, get payment plans and working with people to get these in. We changed the way we do our liens and when they get liened. And prior to that, things were several months, and by the time they got liened, they owed several $1,000s. Now things are getting taken care of when their amounts are a lot smaller, and we're working with them. So yeah, no, I think we're in a much better place than where we have been. And but thank you.
Doug, I'd have to ask, is there something in particular that prompted this finding? If these accounts are years and years old, they audit us every year. Was there something in particular that prompted them to look in this direction and have this finding?
Honestly, I think which was interesting in this audit is the city has done such a great job with the other financials and everything, the way they handle it for many, many, many years. And it was like, they were digging way far into things that, there wasn't one thing. It's, there was, and actually what happened is they did talk to one of our staff about the policy on how we were doing these things. And then when they found out I wasn't charging interest, it became an issue from them because we are basically gifting governmental funds. And, I really don't have an answer on it wasn't one thing. It was just that they were looking at our policy and procedures and that we didn't have a really good policy on that. So, but we will. In fact, we have, I can't remember how many pages, several pages already written up on policy for this stuff. And I know what they're looking for, and I know where I have to be vague, and I'm going to. So we'll have it there.
All right, thank you.
I'm gonna ask. I dug into this a little bit in the exit strategy or exit interview with the auditors. Mary and I attended with the mayor and Doug, and I think we were asking these questions back in February and March when the crisis hit and people were losing their jobs. And, we were pretty clear to give some direction to be thoughtful and helpful to people. But, I don't think anybody assumed we were giving away public funds or intended to do that in any way. What the state law says is that you just have to have some interest rate, and it doesn't have to be very large. And so, I want to make sure that our policies that we do adopt are careful not to be punitive and are working for people and helping break the cycle of poverty. So to the degree we can, while recognizing that people need to pay their bills. So I hope that those policies will come back in front of the city council.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm actually putting in there is, our policy talks about how we do our leaning. Well, we're not leaning right now because of COVID. We had this discussion with council, and that was a decision you guys made that we don't do any leaning or charge any. So that's in the policy that it's council discretion to make those kinds of recommendations during things. So yeah, I'll make sure that we bring that forward for you to see. Okay, we also received a management letter on our federal procurement requirements. And if you remember correctly, this was one that we had a management letter last year. They recommended that there were 3 specific items that the city needed to change to make our purchasing policy meet the new federal guidelines. The city did add those 3 items, and we thought we were good. This year, they found a 4th one that they didn't address last year. And so we got written up on that, or a management letter on that. And it's mainly that specifically stating that the procedures to determine the most restrictive of federal, state, and local procurement methods to follow when using federal funds. So we've updated our policy and we've got that taken care of. We looked at some other cities and went through theirs, make sure that we're completely covered. And I think we should be good there. So that was that one. And any questions on that one? And then disappointingly, we did get an audit finding, and this was on the city's internal controls over accounting and financial statement preparation were not adequate to ensure accurate and complete financial reporting. They had 4 things that they brought up for this finding, and one of them was that the first one was that that the city didn't appropriately evaluate expenditures paid in early 2020 and relate to transactions for fiscal year 2019, sorry, 2019, and should be recorded in the financial statements. The city did concur with this, that's true, and it was due mainly to one, not making excuses, but I do have an excuse. We did miss this and it should have been caught, but it was mainly due to one large capital project expenditure that for the I-5 and College Way project. And so this was on a capital expense. So, and to answer some questions that came up, it didn't affect any budgets or any reserves, since it's a capital project where when we budget for capital projects, they get a budget and it carries forward year to year to year till it's paid off. So there wasn't an impact to that, but it was an impact to the financial statements. So that was corrected, and we have, and again, that was hard when everybody was working from home and being able to identify those things. So we'll be watching that. And then let's see, number 2. Oh, I'm sorry, I already did that. Oh no, back up, sorry, my fault. And then the city has been evaluating and improving its processes and controls over the capital asset reporting. However, the city's year-end reconciliation between the asset tracking module and the general ledger was not completed before the financial statements were finalized. This one's kind of funny, I guess, is a term, because this is when we pointed out to them. Happily, this is the very first time in many, many, many years that our asset management system, which we really need a new one, but our asset management system completely ties to our general ledger. It never has for as far back as we can see. Our staff has been working really hard on getting that done, and they've been and then there was a lot of adjustments made to correct everything and make sure that our asset management system is correct. And one thing that there was is largely based on, there was a journal entry entered by an employee at the city while another one was working from home and did not include the change in the financial statements. It got missed, and we pointed it out to the auditors, and they put it as a finding for us. So, but again, I think this is I'm extremely proud of my staff for getting this part done. This is a big, great job, and I guess I'm okay for getting written up if that's what they had to do. And then the third one here was for the city presented a fiduciary statement of net position and statement of revenues. I know a lot of this stuff is really boring, and basically what this one was about is we had 4 different GASB statements that we had to implement this year. And we implemented 3 of them great. We had one for asset retirement obligations, one for debt disclosures, and one for majority equity interests. And then we had one that was for fiduciary activities. And we did have a question on how we were supposed to treat our the reclassification of the
school impact fees.
Thank you, school impact fees. And we actually asked the question, and we didn't get a response, but we didn't follow through with it. And so we decided to, err on the side of caution, and that was unfortunately a mistake on our part. And so we had to fix that. Very interesting enough, since our audit has been posted, we've been getting calls from many cities wanting more information because they did the same thing that we did. There was no direction on this one, and our audit was one of the first ones. So I think this audit was this finding was good because it's helping a lot of cities out there. So anyway, so that was with that one. And then the last one was just on our how we're recording our property tax revenues and some of our other revenues as far as accruals. This is something we didn't make any changes. This is something we've done forever. We same way we've done it every year from year to year to year. But we concurred that we need to do this a little different. The city has always reported property tax when received because the report we receive from the county does not state when the taxes were levied. We since contacted the counties, we talked to them, and they were able to figure out a report for us. So we're going to start getting a report for them, so we'll be able to accrue those. And then they said that there was a lot of other little taxes in the past that we have never done that in the past, but we will include those accruals in the next financial statement too. So, you know, overall, this was, you know, probably one of the most challenging and frustrating audits I've ever been through. We made the changes that they have, and I'd be interesting to see what they're going to look for next year. So anyway, sorry I have this finding. I apologize to council. And again, you know, if you read that CAFR, it's really good stuff in there. But any questions on any of that?
I just want to say that I will go back and say to them again next year, if we're still in the middle of, or we're still in a COVID situation, that they should give us a year off because we've done such a good job for so many years that I will actually call the auditor if I can, if somebody would let me tell her that, because
I'll
anyway,
get you that number.
I'm in. Okay. Thank you and your staff very much.
Thank you.
Well, one thing I wanted to make sure we reiterated, at the end of the audit, they issued the letter certifying our statements, and we did apply for the CAFR to get our award for our financial statement. So just FYI. Out of all the pain, we still did the CAFR. And it was interesting, one of the, because I expressed my great frustration at how this all went to their head auditors as well. And one of the statements back was, well, you know, maybe you shouldn't have gone for your CAFR and let that go for the year. And I'm like, it's not strive for excellence. Okay, fine. But we've applied for it. So, okay. So, thanks, Councilor. I know it was a ton of information tonight, but we've completed our agenda items. So I'm going to ask Kevin if there is a need for an executive session tonight.
There is. I'd invite the mayor and members of City Council to go into an executive session and discuss with legal counsel enforcement action, litigation, or potential litigation. Of course, the city is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding such discussion is likely to result in either adverse legal or adverse financial consequence to the city. 20 minutes.
Okay, with that, then we'd be adjourned at 8:22.